right, everybody. Welcome to Link Brown and Gray Matters. Obviously, I'm Link Brown. Today we have with us a mechanical research engineer at MIT, but working at CERN, which is CERN is the Centre d'études recherche nucléaire, or the European, the Center for European Nuclear Research, based just outside of Geneva, Switzerland. Kodwo Dadzie. Kojo, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
All right, so I got to give a little bit of background for everybody to understand. When I started the Gray Matters podcast, the whole idea here is I started thinking about people who are just on their own success journey, who are moving through life, making a difference for themselves and making a difference for the world. And Kojo is one of the first people I thought about. So I've known Kojo for 25 years now. We went to college together. Always stayed in touch. He's a good friend of mine. Funny thing is that when I moved to Europe 4 years ago, he, like, literally somebody told me, say, "Hey, Kojo's moving to Europe too." And I said, "What?" So we hadn't talked for, I don't know, maybe a year or so, but we got back in touch. You know, he's intelligent. Everybody loves him. He's just easy. The word I like to use for you, Kojo, is steady. You're just, you're a cool dude. I love you, that you're my friend. So again, welcome to the podcast. I appreciate you sharing your story.
Well,
all right. All right, cool. So Kojo. All right. So obviously Kojo is spelled Kodwo.
Yes.
Everybody to understand. Now, tell me a little bit about who you are, like where you, like your family history, just so everybody understands.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me. Well, my family, my dad is from Ghana, born a small town outside of Accra called, actually further a little outside of Accra, which is the capital, a town called Takoradi, and he grew up with their big family, and he moved to the U.S. maybe when he was a teenager, and met my mom in college. She was American. She's from Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi, born and raised, and then they met in New York City in college. You know, they dated for forever. And they had us. So yeah, it was sort of one of those situations where they were, the story is that my mother had trouble with math, and my dad had trouble with English. So that's how they helped each other. And then they ended up dating, getting married, having us, the family.
I like it. Yeah, that's great. Okay. So they went to college together then?
They did, yes.
Okay, that's cool. All right, awesome. And then you were born where?
Bronx, New York.
In the Bronx. All right. So you definitely, you and lots of other people that I met over my time at Carnegie Mellon was like teaching me about East Coast, what the East Coast was like. Because me as a Midwest kid, I'm like, huh? Like you know, everything you did was completely different.
Yeah,
so I always have a question about, like, people who are, first of all, being from a family that is Ghanaian and American. So right. I guess kind of, do you even consider yourself to be Ghanaian, or what do you consider yourself to be?
We were always both, honestly. We had, in the family, we're Ghanaian. It doesn't matter what, it doesn't matter what other people were saying.
Right.
We were Ghanaian. We went through all the relatives treat us that way, all the friends and family treat us that way. They want us, not that the American side didn't matter, but it was important to understand our roots and where we came from. And I was very into it. So I did a lot of stuff with my dad, going to family events, different social outings, and weddings and parties, and anything cultural, so I can try to understand it. Right. So I sort of immersed in it. But yeah, and I've always seen myself as a little bit of both, but both, I guess literally African American.
Yeah, you're the actual African American. Got it. Okay. So have you ever been to Ghana? I don't even know. Have you been to Ghana before?
I only been one time. It was a long time ago when we were probably like 15, 16, and actually, yeah, maybe about 15.
Did you feel like that had an impact on you, or that mattered to you at all? Or how did it
Oh,
impact you when you went?
it was tremendous, actually. It was one of those. It was a great experience where we saw. We were there for about a month, and we saw all the extended family that were there that we hadn't met before.
Mm-hmm.
Saw all the places where my dad grew up. We learned a lot about how the family was structured, where everybody lived, and you saw also the cultural divide. It was a long time ago, so at the time there was probably a more pronounced cultural divide than it would be now. Ghana's a lot more modernized and more up and coming these days, but back then you could definitely see the differences in status and wealth and opportunity, and it can be it was very interesting, and it was very educational, and I learned a lot about my family and about how my dad became who he is, and it's actually I enjoyed it a lot.
So I actually have a couple of questions there because okay, so what was the cultural divide? You said, so obviously you talked about there being difference in, like, I guess, poverty level, US versus maybe, but like what really was like what was the big cultural shift or difference that you saw?
The self-sufficiency was probably the most thing I noticed the most. I think it was a little, I say cultural divide at the time because there was the more affluent members of our family who my dad's uncle was a diplomat, so he worked for the there's that level of middle class, upper class, if you will, that comes from being a government employee, having some level of status, and he was very international. He spoke many languages, and he had many connections. So it was his attitude and personality was more cultured, more probably European, I would say.
Gotcha.
And then there was there were other parts of the family that lived in the tenement houses, and they didn't have running water. The power would go out every couple of days, and
right.
they didn't have refrigeration. You took baths in a pool, and it was that it wasn't. They wouldn't exactly say they were poor. They would just say that's just the way it was. So I think it was just you had to kind of check your frame of reference, and so that was enlightening, I would say.
So, but enlightening how? So, like, how do you, like, particularly, okay, because I haven't really seen that before, where people in the same, well, I have seen it, but people in the same family, right, like, are one's a diplomat. I mean, a diplomat is like one of the highest highest levels you can be, right, versus being in a what did you call it,
I say tenement, but it's more
a tenement, yeah,
supposed to be like a project.
Okay, tenement. I learned a new word today. So, so a tenement. Like, how did that? And you're saying like it is what it is. It was just reality.
I say that in the sense that I never sensed. I don't remember feeling like they saw themselves as equals. Maybe because they were part of the same family, but there was a certain sense of pride.
Gotcha.
We don't they may have more, but they're not better than me. It was that sense of knowing, and that was felt like the whole time I was there. I didn't feel as though I went from one person to the other person. They didn't. I didn't. I think if anything, I was the one that stood out, saying this is weird, because I was being American. It was the whole was very unique.
No, that's interesting. So yeah, I love that. So you're more self-sufficient. People just go, okay, this is where I am.
Mm-hmm.
You are where you are, but I'm still equal. I'm still me. Like they don't put their value based on their money or their status in life, but it was just based on kind of who they were, or their family history, or their kind of connection. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I never knew that. So
I mean, money was important, obviously.
of course.
But they didn't didn't hold them back. It didn't make them feel like they didn't feel bad about themselves, or they didn't feel low. They didn't complain. They just, you know, they had, if they wanted more from life, they just planned on getting more. It was just, that was the sense.
Okay.
They didn't define themselves by their circumstances, by their attitude about it.
Okay, so this is another question, because in some cultures, the person who's really successful becomes the financier, or the the loan shark, I'll call it, for the rest of the family. Like obviously every family is a little different, but did you notice that like those who were started to become more ambitious, even though they lived at a lower level, would like they would always connect with the diplomat guy, your uncle, to be able to make their way? Or
that's in every family, I think. But
okay.
I think that's always there. But well, Ghanaian culture, as far as my family was concerned, was that it's expected. The ideal is that when one person's success is everyone's success, especially if you're an older person. Like my uncle, who was diplomat, he was older, so he was like sort of a patriarch, and so his role, if you will, was to be either to give advice or to give support, or to be or to provide connection, or like opportunities for those in the family who wanted to do more with themselves.
Okay.
So he would help cousins, get into school, or recommendations, or network for them, that sort of thing. He made it. He give back to the family. Okay. So I guess in that sense, that's probably where there probably was we're all in this together. They're quite. I mean, yes, of course, some people are a little bit off, but that's family. But I think the most part, it had a community vibe.
A community vibe, but still a self-sufficiency vibe. That's what I'm hearing.
Right. Exactly.
Like, because you get some families where one person makes it and they go, "Oh, okay, great. He made $100, so he needs to give 95 of it to his 95 family members, so everybody only gets $1." And it's like, well, then I have 5. Like, what's the what's the point here? Right? So
I think that's true. I think that I think is from what I could see in Ghana, that's a big part of the culture anyway, just because it is, you give back to your family. That's the rule. And even with my dad, the rule was, even when you don't, just because you made it doesn't mean you're done.
Right.
It's part. We're all on this. We're all doing this as a part of a team. Yeah. So but it wasn't. Your success is still your success. It wasn't meant to. It didn't mean that you had to stop. It was your responsibility now. But it was your responsibility more, not to give money so much as experience or life advice.
Right. Advice.
So
connection. Yes. Not necessarily using all of your financial resource to be able to help someone else. Okay. Right. That's cool.
So if you made it, how did you make it? What did you do? Can I do that too? I mean, and then, or what do I need to do what you did, or do it differently, or do it my way? So it was that was the giving back part.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. That's cool. So all right. So you got your mom's from Mississippi.
Yep.
South.
Yeah.
You got your dad from Ghana, which is east. You've got right. So far east in our reference. Okay, and then you get the name Kodwo Dadzie.
Yes.
I had an experience with another Ghanaian friend of mine who never liked someone mispronouncing his name. In fact, he would correct them and go, no, like I'm going to try not to give his name, but he would say, no. They'd say, oh, I'm just going to call you Nee or whatever. And then he's like, no. That's not my name. My name is this, and it means something. And so he goes, you'll just learn it correctly. Like, does your name, I'm sure it has a meaning, because all names have a meaning. Like, what is the meaning of Kodwo Dadzie? Like, what's the...
my name is, well, the name Kojo is a pretty traditional name. And there's different spellings of it. You know, most of it's like Kojo or Koju or something, but it usually has a W in it because, there's two. Well, my name has a W in it, but usually there's two W's in it, and and it comes from the word for Monday. So usually the traditional names there's a day of the week you were born on.
Okay. And
so my name refers to me as a child born on a Monday.
Okay. Cool.
My name is a little bit unique because I wasn't born on a Monday. I was born on a Sunday. So the story is my brother was born on a Sunday. He gets the name for Sunday. I was born on a Sunday too, but I can't be named two Sundays. So it was kind of crazy. So I was named after an uncle.
They're like, screw it, just give him the next day of the week.
I was named after an uncle, one of my dad's great uncles. Man, so that's how it worked out. It worked out that way.
That's hilarious, dude. That's hilarious. Oh my god, that's hilarious. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
The dilemma of how you name a kid. So, yeah. Okay, that's interesting. All right. So, do you care if somebody pronounces your name correctly, or are you kind of cool with it either way?
I did for a long time, but then I got over it because it wasn't that big a deal. I see it's not that big a deal for me to correct somebody.
Yeah.
It's a very phonetic name, Kojo. It's not that complicated. So as long as they know it, they know it. I think, and you just explain to them the name means something. It's spelled differently. It means this, and then they kind of get over it. But it's not that complicated. So it wasn't always that big a deal.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So like you said, my one of my other Ghanaian friends, his name is like second born son of Tay, like in this tribe. Like it actually had a very specific meaning. So it wasn't like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It was and I don't know what tribe he was from. Another thing that always crosses my mind, I don't think we've ever talked about this, but obviously we have other mutual friends who are half African. Like, okay, so I just need to tell a quick part of this. So for me, a lot of people, so now moving here in Europe, people say, I'm still crying over that Monday, Sunday stuff. But, okay, so a lot of people come and they say, oh, okay, well, where are you from? And I tell them, America. And they say, well, but where's your roots? And I'm going, okay, I've taken the ancestry.com and basically it's all of West Africa, right? Like it's a mix. But I was never a person who got really into knowing exactly where in Africa I would have come from. My theory is that you need to know your dad, you need to know your grandfather, and maybe even your great grandfather. Like if you know 3 generations back, pretty much those are the people who have the biggest effect on you. That's always been my reasoning. Honestly, if I knew 600 years back, I would go, like, I don't know what it would actually mean to me.
Yeah.
So that's me personally. But I didn't know, like, for you, from your side, like, did it ever, does it, like, maybe I'll ask it this way. How is it different, or how many generations back do you know of your dad's side versus your mom's?
Good question. I would say I think I probably know more about my dad's side than my mother, just only because um, most people born in America, African Americans, especially in the South,
Right.
that information gets diluted.
Right.
From
Yeah,
so it's hard to tell. I know as much as I know as much as from my dad's side, probably great grandparents.
okay.
No, actually, no. That's a lie. I know from my dad's great grandmother. So that'd be my double great for me.
Okay, so it's 4 generations back.
Yeah, and
Okay.
then for my mother's side, probably just great grandparents.
Okay, so maybe 1 generation back. But did it
Yeah.
mean something? Does it have a stronger meaning to you, or did you ever, like, talk about, like, even the history of the tribe your dad comes from? Like, was that, like, really, like, central? Or for some people it is, for others I don't see it, but maybe your experience, I don't know.
Actually, not particularly. I think we didn't talk about it that much, honestly. I think we talked about it in the sense of it was important to know, but it wasn't, we didn't define ourselves. It was more, my dad was more about, it was more just, it was just side information. It wasn't, because
Gotcha.
he's someone he's like, I am who I am. I'm not worried so much about who I was supposed to be. And so, and then so that was the message that he would kind of convey. And for my mom, she had a fascination about it. I mean, I think once we talked a lot about, for mom, we talked a lot about the civil rights movement and our family's history going to Mississippi and the different stories that she had heard over the years, and anyway, it was a very sensitive subject for my mom because the family, the whole idea of, I'm sure coming from slavery and and establishing roots in a hostile environment, and that particularly that particular part of the South, it became more folklore and stories you sat around at the camp, around the fire and talked about, as opposed to history. So it was like oral history. And then with my dad, it was more footnotes, if you will.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So things are surely more established, but not necessarily emphasized.
Right.
Your dad's side of the family is more like just really focused on the fact that you were of who your dad is, who you're kind of your immediate family, right, and that you have roots in Ghana, in this town, and not necessarily hundreds or 10 generations back.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Yeah. All right. So as all African parents do, is they instill educational values in their kids. Just like so. How did that work? So you're a mechanical engineer, smart guy. How do you, obviously humble too, I see your face when I say that, but how do you, tell me about, like, growing up, like, education, like, how important was it in school? Like, was school to you, education and succeeding? Yeah. What was that?
Education was first. First, second, and third. That's what I called it. So yeah, it was the study method. So
but why?
Because it was considered an honor. I think my dad emphasized the opportunity of being in a country where, you know, technically the sky was the limit. You know, there was nothing holding you back other than your level of effort. As opposed to in Ghana, I know for him, growing up was a lot of responsibility because he was the oldest son of his siblings, and he had a lot of responsibility to be. And my grandfather had passed away young when he was young, so he was taking care of the family, taking care of his siblings, taking care of his mom, taking care of had family obligations, chores, and he still had to study and do work. And so for him, the idea and when at the time, and probably still today, going to school and living in America was a dream. Wow, I get to go across the ocean and be a country of opportunity. And it was emphasized that we were lucky to be born here or there, and we had a chance to, and there are many parents from other countries who are bringing their children to America to succeed or to have opportunities that give them an advantage over those who stayed in their original countries, their home country, or native country. And, and they're all fighting for the same 3 or 4 spots, so to speak. And so you have to be able to, you don't want to give up what could easily be yours just because you want to have fun or have experiences or have whatever things that kids did. And so so he emphasized it's important to not give up your future for your present.
Okay. So a lot of self-sacrifice and
that's the strong theme. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. No. I'm just trying to like really get it, because actually, as you were saying that, I'm thinking, okay, I'm fully African American. My parents, I know back to slavery, and that's about it, from both sides of my family. And I go, I think sometimes we have this, and we're an African. You were saying your dad is going, wait, he says in Ghana, I don't have all the opportunities, but the sky is the limit in the US, where the African American might say, or from born who's generationally here in America, might say, wait, I didn't ask to come here. And in their mind, at least, the sky isn't the limit.
Right.
Only like the limit is whatever what some people might consider an oppressor or whatever say is their limit, which I just find it interesting, like the difference. I mean, we're the same skin color. I personally probably look more African than you do. And I go, right? So I go, so maybe, I know, but I say, like, when it's amazing how it's the same color, it's the same,
right.
We have the same origins in a sense, but a different mindset in terms of how we, how you might view your opportunity in America versus what you're coming from. Or maybe that was just your dad's view. Maybe there are other people who think differently, but I just find it interesting.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I think, but you kind of have to look at it in the sense of, how do I put it? I would say you have to kind of look at it as the marketing, so to speak, of America at the time. Now, growing up in the U.S., I mean, we both grew up in the U.S. You know, it's not all milk and honey that people think it is, but for the most part. And then, but when you see other countries, they love the mythology of what America stands for, and so much comes out of America, from music to fashion to the stories and the overall magic, if you will, of what it means to be an American.
Yeah.
That ideology tends to override whatever backstories may have come before that, because all you think is I see famous people on TV. They look happy. They do whatever they want. They have all this money, drive nice cars. Their government isn't telling them how to be, and then they don't have to. They don't feel like they can't say what they want to say. I mean, women have more rights comparatively, and even as African Americans, we struggled, but it was still a better situation than what most African cultures or countries were going through at the time. So if you think, so to them, sure, we have the oppressive past that defines defines the African American experience for so many generations. But I mean, as far as they're concerned, at least you had streets, at least you had food, you had clothes. I mean, it's not like they were, some of the ignorance of Africa, but it worked both ways. Some of the ignorance of,
oh, for sure.
At the time,
I can tell you.
But it was, exactly. So they live in the plains and they fight lions and all that.
I was completely ignorant.
Completely. It's that racial bias even amongst African Americans. It was, and you kind of have to explain this. It's all perspective.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
No. So I mean, I'm just so. For my dad saying that this was an opportunity, he's saying I've seen both sides of the story.
Yeah.
And he had pluses in Ghana and he had pluses and minuses in both countries. And as far as he was concerned, he felt like he had more chances to do more in America than he would have if he stayed in Ghana.
Okay, so I find this fascinating from two standpoints. Like the thing that came to my mind immediately when you started talking, I said, okay, so statistically, African immigrants are actually more educated and higher earning than the average American.
Yeah.
But African Americans are actually obviously at the bottom of the rung. They're much lower. So literally the same color, different perspective, right? And as you talk about the value of education, knowing who you are, and taking advantage of the opportunity that he saw somewhere else. But I think there's another thing that was a complete ignorance, at least on my part. Like, it's kind of like going to China the first time as well, like thinking somehow that Africa was like this, I don't even, like a jungle almost, like really, like it was so ignorant in the way I had my mindset about what Africa is, what it could be, the options, the opportunities. And it's really been a learning experience to like see, first, I know more and more people who are, whether they're coming to Europe now, or I've seen them come to the US, or they stay there, and it's a different world. And it's not what you think it is. It's much more like they're people. We're fully developed, right? Like it's just it's really about a mindset. Anything. I just found it fascinating. I know there's some other. I'd love to get into it more. I'm going to. I'd love to get into it more. We'll come back to it later. Because one other thing that's very interesting now is because I want to get you want to talk about, and I might come back to it later, but okay, you go to college, you're in Carnegie Mellon, then you graduate from school. And where did you go to? Where did you you ended in?
City College of New York.
In SUNY College, New York.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you start your career. Tell me, because I want to get back to this issue of like living in France and living in Europe and how you've seen that difference. Because I'm quite sure you'll be able to tell. But maybe we'll come back to, you know what, let's do this. Let's come back to your college.
Okay.
I want to know, like, okay, so from your standpoint, being here now, you've been in France for 4 years.
4 years, yeah.
Yeah, 4 years. All right. So what are you seeing as the differences? I've been the same, 2 years in France, 2 years in Geneva. What are you seeing as like the big differences, like lifestyle wise or race relations wise?
Wow. Okay. Yeah, it's very, it's, I have a mixed opinion about it, only because I see the good and the bad of it. As an American, when I first got here, I didn't like it because it was too relaxed.
Yeah.
And I felt like things needed to be happening faster. I was like, what's going on? Why is it taking so long? And they're just like, it's okay. It's easy. Don't. Yeah. They have a very relaxed. Well, it's more. In America, we pride ourselves on our work ethic and our level of commitment to doing a job. And in Europe, especially in France, particularly in France, they pride themselves on their ability to relax and their ability to take time for themselves. And they emphasize that that work-life balance is more about life and work, where it's the opposite for Americans, I think. And that was an adjustment, because when I want to get things done, I have to wait. And I have to, you know, I talk to my colleagues and we're doing things. They're either apathetic or they're not paying attention, or just like, oh, I'll get to it later. And I'm just like, no, I need it. And you have to kind of, and if you want something done, you know, you go to the store, you go to, you're trying to order something, or you're trying to get somebody's help or something. It's they'll get to it when they get to it. I resented it in the beginning, just because it was difficult to break out of that. Because back to reference the education part, you know, and the work mindset growing up was, you know, you want to get things done when you can, as soon as you can, because it's better to be ahead of it than behind it, or try to, at least, you know. And I wasn't always that good at it, but I recognized the value of it. So it was an adjustment. And it wasn't as though the work quality was diminished. It was just a sense of there are more important things to life than work. And that was something that I hadn't really taken considered.
Yeah.
So that took some getting used to. Now I've spent some time. I've come to understand it and respect it, because I don't feel diminishment of quality, but I do understand the value of personal time and being able to turn your brain off once in a while, just to not be so focused on the next thing, but to appreciate the present and where you are.
Yeah. I would definitely agree. It's pissed me off at first coming here.
Yeah.
I want to get things done, but they're more like, no, there's a time for everything.
Right.
And I've kind of appreciate that. But I appreciate that part. I can see where you're coming from. Yeah. What's been your experience? I just want to go back to the race part. Like, what's been your experience as Black man in France / Geneva. Now you live on the border, so
Right.
it's not France. It's
It's kind of a combined mixture,
it's
yeah.
combined. It's it's much more international than it would be if you
Yeah,
lived in the middle of the country. But
right, of course.
what's been your experience? First, that's a very general question, but specifically, no, go ahead. Give me the general first.
Okay, the general was surprisingly calm. Nice, I'll put it that way. Because I was expecting some of the same. I've come to expect a level of passive aggression, just from America in general. Just as you know, race relations are covert, you know, and if it's hard to tell them unless it's blatantly obvious.
Mm-hmm.
But you learn to kind of get the nuance of what's and what doesn't. So, but in this case, I felt like here it was calm. It was like there was a sense of respect, not even respect. Like I, I think the hardest part for them was that I was American at all, and
Right. You think, okay, so this is where I want to get to a specific question.
yeah,
Because did they see you as African, or did they see you as American, or did they just see you as your skin color? Like, what do you feel people see you as or identify you as here?
I felt that they identified me more as American
Yep.
because I think Africans have a different mentality because most Africans who go there at least have a certain training in French culture because most, especially if you're from West Africa, like Ghana, Togo, Nigeria, they all have those are technically French, you know, Ivory Coast, those are French colonies.
Mm-hmm.
So they have some background. They speak French, or they taught French in school, or part of their culture is influenced by the French. So you see a lot of them here in France, or in France and Geneva, and they sort of assimilate better, and they can tell. For me, I was a fish out of water. I'm very, awkward, not quite sure what's going on, and they and you know I think I was clearly typically American, probably for their eyes. So it kind of it was very different, but they were nice about it. You know, they kind of, I don't feel like they were dismissive. They were dismissive because of the French. They're very particular about French, but they weren't dismissive as people. You know, if you're a good person, if you're affable, or someone you can talk to, they don't feel like you're not, if they don't feel like you're standoff or something, then they'll accept you regardless. And that's interesting. That I didn't expect. However, I have found that the Africans here are not very friendly to the African American, and I was wondering why that was. And it kind of goes back to how Africans are in the U.S. There's a certain, from my experience, there's a certain elitism in the sense that going to school or being outside of their country is sort of privilege, and so you're considered upper class if you went to school in Europe, for example. You know, you went to school in England, you learned English from English people, or you learn a different language at all, or if you go to America, your parents are wealthy, your family is affluent, connected, something. And the humbling thing about the Africans in America is that, you know, the racial divide affects anybody based on color. So you don't get to feel that sense of elitism, if you will, or sense of you're all treated the same regardless of what your color is. And then, so even if you are making money, your level of money doesn't change how if you feel oppressed, if you feel
in Europe or in the U.S.?
in the U.S.
Okay.
In the U.S., I mean that I think that was the great equalizer, because you feel, Africans in America feel like they're special because they come from Africa to America, and the sense of like I'm African, I'm not like African Americans, and like because I remember growing up a lot, they would say African Americans are wasting their opportunity, and I used to hear that a lot, because they would say, oh, they're out there, in the urban communities doing this, doing that, and why don't you just go to school? Why don't you just do this? Why don't you this? And I mean, I would see both sides of it, obviously, because it's not as simple as just do it. But it's, but still, there was that sense of, if we can come from across the ocean to do this,
right,
and you're already there, what's the difference? We don't come with anything up. We're going to the same schools as you are. We're doing this, we're doing that, and it's like, so that was a big conversation point. I remember that. But in Europe, I think, since that sense of, I know, I've seen in Switzerland, a little bit in France, that, I'm here because I'm good. I'm accepted amongst these people. And, and I don't feel the same prejudices that you might have felt in the US. So I can't relate to you. And
okay,
and there's a certain separation in my mind.
okay. I'm sorry, go ahead.
And it might be me. I admit that, but I mean, I haven't really had that same connection with blacks, if you will, in this country than the U.S. There's no sense of, I think it's a sense of community, because like even in the U.S. we always kind of feel like we're part of something,
Yeah.
Like, and in Europe you're on your own.
I always say that the shocking part, I'm going to come back to your point, but the shocking part when I first moved to France is, I would give the head nod and they wouldn't give it back. And
no, you wouldn't give it back. No.
They're like, what? You dissed me. You dissed me. How did you diss me like that? Like, and I go, wow, they don't care. Like,
they don't care.
It doesn't mean anything to them. There's no sense of solidarity. I would think it's interesting though, because I've actually noticed, just having some conversations with people from Africa who live in Europe, is that it's almost like, because there is a level of, I won't call it second-class citizenship, but that like the people feel somewhat discriminated against, but not just because they're African. It can be because they're German, or because they're Portuguese or Spanish, because they're not French, or they're not Swiss. They're not from there.
Yeah.
It's not really a black-white thing. It's just, you're not from this country.
Right.
So what I've noticed is, like, I am personally not affected by it at all. It doesn't even register in my mind.
Right.
Maybe because there are cultural cues, like that you say, like, you can, in the US, a black person can, will, the way they perceive a certain action from somebody who's white is completely different from an African person, a person of African descent who comes to the US and gets that same treatment, or that same has that same experience. They might perceive it differently. Me, I realize now, in like, particularly when I lived in France, I like, people would say, oh, did you notice this? I go, no, I didn't. And I speak the language. I would still go, no, I didn't notice. It just didn't mean literally didn't mean anything to me. So my mind kind of registered it as just, oh, okay, this is just how people are, but it really doesn't matter. I'm still here. I can still succeed. I can still do whatever I want. Do you think your opportunities are more in Europe, or do you would have more in the US?
Europe, by
You
far.
think so for you? Okay. And do you think for someone who is poor
Mm.
but born in Europe would have more opportunities themselves, like have more opportunities in Europe or in this region than they would in the United States?
I think they would probably do better in the U.S. Actually, I think the biggest I from hmm, I think if you're poor and you grew up in this country and
You
you
grew
moved
up
to U.S.
poor in France, poor
if you
black person in France or African
right,
person, whatever, in France. Poor person from Maghreb or from North Africa,
right,
um,
but
versus
they have
poor in the U.S. or
versus poor in the U.S.
yeah,
Okay,
like
um, like who has more opportunities? I would say I think the U.S. I think I think the U.S. has more opportunities just because there are more avenues for you to find a way out. You know,
mhm.
I if you, I think here it's a very strict structure. Like you said, they're the culturalism, if you will, of
Mhm.
being in France is strong. They
Yeah.
love being, they love French. They love French. They want you to be French too.
Yeah, for sure. It's strong.
Like to them, it's not as easy for you to if you don't drink the Kool-Aid, so to speak.
Hmm.
And America, at least, even if they don't like you, they can't deny your skill or your ability or
Hmm.
what your contribution is, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's the advantage.
Yeah. I even find that, like I said, there's no white necessarily. Like nobody thinks that way. They think like, so let's just take France, for instance. Like if a German guy comes in, I don't care how good of French he speaks, they're like, he's German.
Yeah, he's German always. Yeah,
Get out of here. Or anywhere, or Spanish,
you're wherever,
um, wherever
you're
you're
not.
from. If
Yeah.
it's not France,
Mm-hmm.
it's other,
Yeah, it's
right?
other.
It's
Yeah, it's other.
it's other, and it's a real interesting mentality because
Yeah.
we base it on, or not we, in the U.S. sometimes our perception is that it's based on skin color,
Mm-hmm.
where for uh, Europeans, I think all European, a lot of Europeans, I should say, in countries are like this, is it's more based on your culture. Like
Right.
even a French person, honestly, from just the other side of the border to Switzerland, even though they both speak French,
Yeah.
there's a real tension in between those people. That
I understand. They're the same. From the outsider, they're exactly the
from the
same.
outside, they're the same, and our brains, they're the same. But to
Right.
them, they know the difference.
Right.
They see real nuance in who each person is, and it goes both ways. It's not just Swiss think one way about the French. No, it's the French think another way about Swiss. It's a very interesting dynamic.
Yeah, it is.
So how did you even get to? So you graduate from college,
Mm-hmm.
mechanical engineer. So how do you even get to France, by the way? Like, how does this happen?
Luck, I would say.
Okay.
Luck and a little skill, and
A
a
little
little.
skill. Okay. All right. So we're gonna before you answer this humbly, so
Okay.
people understand that CERN. I've me and Kojo have gone out every once in a while. You and I, we go out,
Yeah.
and when I tell people, "Hey, this is my friend Kojo. He works at CERN." If you could see how um if you could see how people react when you say he's at
Yeah, I
CERN,
know.
it's as if he was an NFL football player or as if he had
That's
won a Nobel Prize.
yeah. It's wonderful.
Don't act like, oh, it's a little bit of okay. You
Okay.
can
Okay.
be
Fine.
humble, but let's
I
be honest.
killed it, son.
Okay, now let's be realistic. What happened?
Yeah, realistic. No, what happened was I didn't know I didn't know I was applying to CERN at the time. That's the thing,
Okay.
because I the there was a job opportunity that came up that was for a mechanical researcher who had a background in aerospace and could do and physics,
Hmm.
and I was me. So I said, okay, it was, and I was called by a headhunter, and I think it was, and he had seen my resume, probably on LinkedIn or something like that, and he called me saying if I was looking for a job, and then I said, yeah, of course, and if it's a good opportunity, and he said, okay, I think you're a good fit. Here's the problem, and I said, oh, and he said it's in Switzerland, and I said, huh? And he didn't go into details. I think he just wanted to see if I was willing to travel, and I said, sure. I said, that's fine. Push it through, see what happens. I didn't think much of it because the odds of me traveling overseas at the time was like, that seems far-fetched.
Yeah.
But I didn't hear from this guy I didn't hear from anything about the job for about a month. So I said, okay, I probably didn't get anything from it. And so then a month passes, and I get a phone call or an email rather. No, he called me. The headhunter guy called me back, and he said, "Okay, they want to interview you." And I said, "For what?" And he said, "This is Switzerland." I said, "Oh, I forgot all about it," because I was like, "This is impossible." I said, "Okay, sure." And then, so about maybe the next day, I had like a video conference. I had a video conference with a room full of people, and that was very intimidating. And it was with Professor Samuel Ting, who if you don't know, he's the Nobel Prize winner in physics for dark matter. Yeah, dark matter research. And I knew I knew the name, but I never really saw his face. And so, but it was intimidating because he was in a room full. He's surrounded by a group of people. Everyone's got notebooks and pads, and it was a very official. And I looked like a war room. And I said, okay. And they're asking me questions about my background, about they gave me a little sample engineering questions, like, okay, have a cantilever, and how much weight would you put? I was like, I was trying to, and I had to rip out some old physics formulas, some old static and dynamic formulas, and I was like, oh. I said, okay, and I managed to get through the first round, so that was good. And then I didn't hear from them. I didn't hear back for almost another month. So I messed that up. I messed the interview. So this, and then I had another phone interview. So this happened this went back and forth 3 times. So over the course of maybe 3 months, I'm having this back and forth conversation with them. And then they said, okay, we'd like to bring you to Switzerland to work for CERN. And I said, what? Because all I knew about CERN was the famous hadron collider.
Yeah,
the particle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's their famous thing. And I thought, I couldn't believe it. And it all happened very quickly. Once the offer came, they wanted to know immediately, are you coming or not? And I said, okay, I'll take it. and then it all happened very fast within a week.
So you really didn't have a plan to come here?
No, it wasn't. I always wanted to go to Europe. I always thought, and the funny thing was, this is kind of a dream job for me. I've always wanted to work for CERN. And I didn't really know how one ever got to work for CERN, because it's a very exclusive place to work.
Yeah.
They don't hire a lot of people, and usually when they do, you're there for a year, you do one thing, and you leave. But they were looking for someone long term, and I fit the criteria, and it all kind of. So it was. I say a little bit of luck because I wasn't looking for it. It kind of came to me, but I do say a little bit of skill, because if I hadn't pursued it and really put the effort in to finish, do the research on it, then I probably wouldn't be here. So.
And if you hadn't had, I don't know, 20 years of engineering,
yes, that helps a lot.
Yeah. That might have prepared you to be successful coming here. Because again, again, obviously it's the it's a nuclear research center. So you go, it's very, very smart people who were there, and it's really amazing. Like I'm happy you're here. Obviously, I was because
Thank you.
you know we've been through it, so we get our chance to talk enough. So just from a personal standpoint, I love that you're here. But I also love that you got your dream job as well. So that's cool. What do you feel like you were? Um, what did you feel? What did you feel like? Where were you at in your life right before, if you don't mind sharing, like right before you got this job? Like what? Like, like, yeah. Where were you at? Yeah. Where were you at? We'll start there.
I was in sales actually. And that's when I was let's see. I was working for a small aerospace company that was going through a lot of transitions, and I mean, they had a new boss like every other month. It was so much chaos, a lot of people, and they actually ended up letting half the team go. So I was like, oh, okay. So the whole company was being restructured, and it was a mess. It was probably a bad place to work overall in the long term. But I went from there. I was kind of in a holding pattern, just figuring out what the next thing was going to be, and I I ventured into sales mostly because I started doing the sales thing mostly as kind of a consultant a little bit, because I was doing market research and doing I guess performance testing, performance comparisons between different vehicles, and so, but that was just more of a side thing, and then I ended up doing the sales because it was I took a chance thinking I need to be to communicate with people better. And so I was trying to, I said, okay, let's try it. Let's see if we can learn a skill. So, so I did all of that, and it was
Into sales to be okay. All right, whatever.
It was not my smartest move, but
hey, no, you learned something. It's cool.
I learned a lot. I will say that was probably the most teachable moments in my life, and so I appreciate it for its value for sure. And that's what I was doing at the time before I got the call for CERN, and that was it was all very chaotic. The whole experience was a chaotic couple of years. Not necessarily in a bad way, just because there's just a lot of going on. Sales was a big deal. I was looking for work, um, uh, and I was living in Virginia, just outside of DC, and it was fun and it was good, but it was just I was never really a fan of much respect to Washington D.C. for those if you're watching it, but it was living in that city. It takes a different mindset, and from it's a very it was a very for me it was very it felt very cutthroat, very um, almost judgmental, oppressive a little bit, even amongst your peers, and I'm not someone who's going to tear someone down to lift myself up, kind of thing. So, that was a learning experience in itself, and so I just the whole thing was very educational.
Yeah, what I hear in that is because I've been through similar things, is many times right before a big blessing that's coming your way, like there's something that's like you're in a spot that's just that's tough. I mean, you're an engineer and then you said, oh, I'm gonna go into sales, like the complete opposite of an of engineering, right? Like you go, oh well, wait, what and whatever's going on in your life, like you're trying to find your way. I was the exact same way. I mean, just many areas of transition. I'm always big on this like transition thing, like there is something going on in your life that is could be traumatic, could be, but it's always something that's right before a real transition happens for you, usually to something better. Like you're going through something that's really bad, and it's like that in your brain, at least you feel like it's bad, and it's like almost like you get this call, like you're in a bad spot, you get this call, and you don't even recognize it for what it is, but you've already been prepared all that time, like that, even throughout the struggles, like to be able to take advantage of something that was that just seemed like it just luckily fell into your lap, you know. And so I mean, that's cool, man. I'm so wow. So Kojo the sales guy. I
know.
You could be a good salesperson because you're very sincere, but it's
that's dependable.
but there's some other challenges that maybe that's cool, man. I'm proud of you. What's your next big dream? Like, what's next for you?
Well, I am. Well, so far CERN's been very good. So I'm building up, working with. I'm working more on different projects with the project that I'm working on, which is AMS project.
Mm-hmm.
So alpha magnetic spectrometer. We work with NASA and the International Space Station. So there's many different projects coming up that are very promising. I'm excited to get started on those once things pick up after the quarantine. So that's on the horizon. I have a pet, I have small pet projects that I want to do, like writing and business. So those are small things I'm working on. Mostly just for myself.
Yeah. And you're writing, like, so is that because I know you're an avid writer, but like, so how do you write? What kind of books or what kind of material are you writing?
Mostly novels. I've been writing since I was a kid, and I've been writing since I was probably second grade, I guess. Yeah. So it's a fun thing for me. I like the storytelling, and I use mostly fiction, science fiction, mysteries, thrillers, that sort of thing. And the good part about it, I get a lot of information and a lot of background from my science and engineering background, so it gives me some material. And for me, it's fun. So I think that's one of those bucket list things where I at least like to write. I have several stories. I would like to publish. If it's just one, I'll be happy. And it's like,
when's it coming out?
I don't know when it's going to drop.
Well, the world's going to hear it, so you've got to.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm working on it. If I'm lucky, end of next year.
Okay, cool. No, seriously, I think obviously you're a really smart guy. You're a talented guy. I hope you pursue it. I hope you do the next thing, because again, we only get one life, and and man, I'm sure you have a lot more stories that you can write and tell, and the world needs to hear it. So so Kojo, I appreciate you sharing your story. I appreciate you sharing your experience. Again, I appreciate you as a friend. I just say it again personally, through all the transitions in my life. Like, you're there, you're steady, you're like my psychologist that I don't pay for. So,
well, okay, you're a brother to me, so it's all good.
For sure, dude. I appreciate it. It was great talking to you.
No, for sure.
People are gonna get a lot out of your story. All right.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
All right, guys. We hope you loved it. Help us spread more global understanding, encouragement, and inspiration. There's 4 things you can do for us. You can comment, subscribe, like, and share. Enjoy the journey.